we just finished modifying the code for the Ranble game, and we were able to add some pretty cool features, I think. Some extra lives and some warning when the fuel gets low. And what else did we add? We added one more thing. We added, a level counter, right. Anyway, so yeah, we finished editing the code. And you can see the way that I edited the code. You don't need to be an expert in even basic programming. You just kind of work your way through the code and try and figure out what things do. And particularly since Kevin was generous enough to give us this fantastic description document that explains what the different sections of the code do, really makes it a lot easier to modify. One way you can start modifying programs yourself is just by going through the code and trying to figure out what it does and make some modifications along the way, see how it works out. And the first thing I normally try to do is figure out what the variables do, which variables are needed to keep track of which different aspects of the game, such as the score, extra lives, and which level you're on, and things like that. And you can try and maybe play around with some other games that you want to modify and just play around with it and see how you do. So now what we want to do, since we finished modifying the code, is we want to have some fun playing around with the graphics to see if we can make some changes to the sprites that are used in this game. So we're going to do that right now, and come along with me and let's take a look. Okay, so let's have some fun modifying the graphics for this game now. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to this file here, which is the .spr file, which is short for Sprite. And the graphics in this game are actually sprites, which are kind of independently controlled graphics that you can use in your game. And the ZX Spectrum Next, as you probably know already, has a dedicated hardware sprite system built into it that makes it really powerful and makes it able to create some really good games by having sprites, which are graphics that can be controlled by this sprite engine, which takes the load off of the microprocessor while the sprite engine or the sprite hardware moves the graphics around the screen. So that's why we're able to make such good games as this one here. And now let's go and open this sprite file here by clicking on it. And when we do that, it brings us automatically into the sprite editor that's built into the ZX Spectrum Next computer. And now all we need to do is figure out which sprites we want to edit and what changes we want to make. So in this game, all of the sprites are actually contained in one sprite file. So larger games might have multiple sprite files that are used to switch in and out of the game as the game requires more graphics to be loaded. But this game contains just one sprite file with all the graphics contained in here, which makes it really easy for us to make our changes all in one place. So first of all, I'm not sure if you are already familiar with this built-in sprite editor, if you already own a ZX Spectrum Next computer, or if you have played with this utility at all. But it's quite easy to use, and I'll just familiarize you with some of the main parts here in case you're not already familiar with it. Up here in the top left we have the large editing window where we can actually edit the pattern for our sprites. For example, if we click on one of the sprites down here, it'll show up in this large window, and that's where we edit it. And so this section at the bottom here is all the sprites that are currently included in this game. So we can click on any one of these and just edit them as we like in that top part. Over here we have an instruction window, which is handy, and you can see here it says press J to cycle through help pages. So if I go ahead and press J on my keyboard, it will cycle through all the various help pages. Now most of these instructions I don't really need because a lot of them refer to what keys to press on the keyboard, but I'm actually going to be using a mouse which I have connected to my ZX Spectrum Next computer through the PS2 port. So I'm going to be using that to make my modifications. And I'll only be using the keyboard for a few of the commands such as saving the file or exiting the program and so forth. And then at the top right here, above those instructions, here we have a preview of the sprite in its actual size. So if I go down here, for example, and select a sprite, this large window where we do our editing is obviously larger than the actual size, but the actual size sprite is shown right next to it here. And then to the right of it over here, we have a palette containing all of the colors that we have available for us to use to make our modifications. And then finally, down below these two items, we have this blank gray rectangle here, which is the animation bar. So if we want to see our sprites being animated, for example, and I'm just going to press the J key on the keyboard to cycle through the instruction pages until we get to the part that talks about the animation. So if we go to here, and it shows these four keys here, we can use H, G, T, and Y. H adds a sprite to the animation, G removes a sprite, T slows down the animation, and Y speeds up the animation. So for example, if we have sprites that are being animated in the game, and this game actually does have some sprites which are animated, for example, these orange spaceships over here, these are all animated in the game, and if I click on one of them, and I press H to add the sprite to the animation bar, then it shows up at the top there. And then if I click on another one and press H again, then it shows the next one. And you can see up here in our preview, it's actually animating it for us. It's showing us what it looks like when these two sprites cycle back and forth. And then we can add the third one here by clicking on it and pressing H again. And there now we have 3 ships in our animation pane here that is being previewed up here to show us what it looks like when it's actually being animated, which is really cool. So if you have animated sprites, you can use those keys to check what it looks like up here. And then if you want to remove a sprite, then you can press G to remove a sprite like that. And T and Y will slow down and speed up the animation. So if I press T now, for example, you can see the animation is getting slower and slower. And if I press Y to speed it up again, then it speeds up again and it goes crazy. Okay, so now let's just remove these sprites here again from the animation bar by pressing G a few times. Okay, now our animation bar is empty. So what changes do we want to make to these sprites? Well, there's not too many things I want to change, but there are a few things. And the first one that I want to look at is probably the least obvious one and the most subtle one, but when we look at it in the game, I think it will make quite a big difference. So these 3 sprites here are the starry background, and you can see the stars are all the same size and the same color and the same, well, shape obviously, and the same brightness. So let's vary that up a bit because stars are not in real life all the same color and the same brightness. So let's add some variety to these star patterns. But we don't want to add too many stars, just a few. So here, for example, this panel has one single white star. And let's add another star that's maybe a bit different color. Maybe we'll select a color here. And I'm just going to select it by left-clicking on it. And actually, does left click work? I forget. No, I think I need to right click on it. So I'll right click on it. And then I'll left click over here to place it in the editor window. So there now we have a kind of a bluish star that we've added. So that's good. Now let's do the same over here. Maybe we'll pick a different shade of blue, but still a light blue, so it's kind of visible. So I'll right click on it here and then left click maybe here. Maybe another one here. And then in this last pane, maybe I'll replace this one with a blue one as well, or maybe a greenish one. I'll just right click on maybe this guy and left click here and see what that looks like. So, okay there. So now we have a few different star patterns, and we don't need to animate these because they're not intended to be animated. They're just intended to be distributed throughout the background of the screen. So let's see what else we can animate. Well, this bullet here looks like it could use a bit of help. It's kind of hard to see that when it's on the screen. So let's make it a bit more obvious by changing these black outline pixels to something more visible. Let's say yellow. Since the background in the game is black, I want something that's visible. So I'll select maybe this yellow color here, and I'll just left click and drag it along here to outline these pixels here to make it a bit more visible. So all the black ones I'll just change to yellow to make it nice and visible in the game. And then what else could we change? Well, this bomb here looks like it could use a bit of help. It's kind of basic looking, and I think I'd like to kind of angle it down. So let's see if we can make it fly down on an angle instead. So now I want to actually copy this red color, but just change the pattern. So if I right click on one of these pixels, it will pick up that color that's in the editor window here. And now I can use this color to paint with, like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of make kind of an angled pattern for this bomb, just very roughly, like this. And I'll right click on this black to pick that up. so I can black out some of these extra pixels that I don't need. And let's see, what do I want this to look like? So I'll right click the right again and make this red. And that kind of looks like an angly bomb. Maybe we'll add a bit of color in there just for effect. Maybe I'll pick up this yellow over here and put it in maybe like this. And I'll pick up this blank color and I'll make these just blank. So there's no color in these white ones. They're just the background color, which is transparent color. And then maybe just for effect, we'll pick another color, maybe this blue, and put it here. And maybe we'll just put an outline on it as well, maybe just to give it some effect on the edge here, like this. There we have a nice colorful bomb now. And what else could we change? Well, there's an explosion sequence that's happening here. And this is an animation. So when something explodes, it displays these graphics. So I'm just going to press H to add these graphics one by one to the animation pane so we can see what it looks like. And these explosion graphics are extremely uniform. So I think in real life explosions would be more kind of random. So let's just randomize these a little bit. So let's start with this single one down here. And first let me slow down the animation a bit, so it's not too distracting. And this, I just want to add some color to it. And I want a bright color. Let's say something like this. And I'm just kind of picking these at random as I see them that look kind of right to me. And I want a bright color in the middle here because explosions are bright, right? They have fire in them and they usually are pretty bright. So what I want to do is, actually I'm going to choose a color that's more yellowish, I think, maybe like that. So I want to kind of use bright colors to modify these explosions, but I want to make them a bit more random. So I'm just going to kind of put some random dots around here, and I'll right click on these background pixels to distribute them in a kind of more random fashion, like this. And I'll right click on the red to pick up a red and kind of have it start to explode like that. And then let's do this guy. And I'm going to right click on the blank one here and just kind of paint over most of these outer ones kind of in a pseudo random fashion. So it looks kind of random like that. But now I want some more yellow ones, so I'll right click on the yellow guy here to add some yellow random dots like that. And then this last outer one here, I've got extra ones showing up in my animation bar, which I didn't want. So I'll just press, I'm just going to remove those by pressing G. I don't actually need to see the animation right now. And then this final one here is when the explosion is starting to dissipate. But again, I want that to dissipate randomly as well. So I'll just right click on the background to get rid of some of these. And I'll keep a few of them, but not in those places. And then I'll right click on the red just to have a few, maybe like that. And I'll grab a yellow here, grab a couple of yellows like that, and maybe some whites. Let's say here, there's a white one here. I'll just grab this one and put in a couple of whites. And I'm going to put in a couple of white pixels in these ones here, even though it's difficult to see them. But these two pixels here, for example, are white. They're not the same transparent background as these other white looking ones. But I want some white pixels in here because white is a good explosion color. And then I'll put just a few white ones in here as well. And then maybe one of these I'll make white, just like that. Okay, so maybe we can add these to the animation now and see what that looks like. So I'll press H to add that one to the animation. And then I'll click on this one, H, click on this one, press H, and this one, press H. And now if we look up here, we can see what the explosion looks like, which I think looks pretty good, kind of more of a random kind of pattern. Now, what else do we want to change? Well, the rest actually look pretty good, I would say. Maybe this guy, could use some highlighting. I'm just going to grab a pink color over here and give him some pink highlighting down the side here, just for effect. And let's say this one here, how about some darker shading perhaps along the side? You can see the light is actually reflecting on the left edge. So why don't we add some more darker hues on the right side? Maybe a kind of a light blue, maybe something like, or maybe a dark blue like this guy here. Maybe if we add a dark blue. And you can see down here, actually let me get rid of these explosions. I'm not using the explosions anymore. Sorry, let me just erase those. So I'll remove these explosions, and there. So now the preview shows us what we have highlighted down here in this bottom list of icons or list of sprites. So we can look up here at the difference that my changes are making, and it's just kind of adding a shading to the backside. And we can kind of dither the shading along the bottom here if we want to kind of make it less of a pronounced shade. So just a little extra touch just to show kind of a shading on the right side, I think is kind of interesting. And then maybe this guy here as well could use some shading. So we'll throw a bit of darker shading down the side of this fuel tank. Maybe down here. Just something a little different. And I'm not an expert at pixel art, obviously, but I can put my own touches on it, and we'll just see how it looks in the game. Maybe a couple pixels up here, just to see if he kind of makes it stand out a bit more. And this ship, why don't we give him a more pronounced window instead of this light blue kind of window here, which looks like an eye. Let's maybe grab a kind of a light yellow and give it a larger, more pronounced window that will be more visible in the game. And maybe even an outline for the window. I'll just pick blue and outline the window kind of like this. Okay, and then the last thing I think I want to do, and we could make whatever modifications we'd like, just what we think looks good, right? There's no rules to this. So these landscape I think can be punched up a bit, and nothing too fancy. All I'm going to do is insert some light colored pixels, maybe this kind of greenish one here. And I'm just going to add a few of these because I think that would kind of give it an extra pop in the game, just to give the landscape a bit more kind of substance to it. And we could even add some different color if we want to, maybe a kind of light blue here might be nice, but not too much, just a few, because we don't want to overdo it. We just want to, well, I just want to give it kind of a birthday cake effect with these different patterns, and just some kind of highlight that I think would be good. So I'll just add some to all the different landscapes here. Just to give it some more depth and make it look like the ground is actually a bit more, well, deeper than it's kind of indicating originally. So let me grab a different color here as well, maybe this one here. And this one, can't see that one very well, maybe a yellow one that we can see better. And we can just fool around with it and play around with it until we come across something that we think looks good. And then when we test it out in the game, then we'll see really what it looks like. So I just want to add a few touches to the landscape just to make it kind of pop a little bit. And again, I'm no expert, obviously, but I think these changes are going to make it look a bit nicer, maybe, or a bit different at least. Oh, there's a whole nother landscape here, I forgot. There's lots of landscape in this game. There's actually 4 different types of levels to this game, which means 4 different terrain patterns, 4 different terrain types. So there are 4 different sets of terrain. And so I just want to modify them all a little bit just to give them a little more pizzazz and make them stand out a bit, just like that. Okay, and then maybe this radar dish could use a bit of highlighting as well, just to make him stand out a bit, like that. And then actually, why don't we see if we can do something with these fuel bars here. So let's just see if we can make these pop a little bit. We'll grab a nice kind of yellowish green here, and we'll fill it in here. And I'm not even being super careful about which pixels I fill in, although it's actually maybe I am. So that's pretty careful. I'll grab this orange and put that one back and put it back there as well. So now that's filled in a bit there, and then the green one, I could do the same with that if I wanted to. Maybe grab a green one and fill in these green ones. Actually, that looks good like that. So I think I'll do the same for this one. I'm just going to put these back again, make these red again. And it's all about experimentation, right? You try something, you see if you like it. If you don't like it, you change it back and try something else. But I want this one to look more red to indicate that the fuel is getting low. So maybe I'll grab this kind of purpley pink here, and I'll put that up here. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll just make it all red, just like that. Yeah, okay. So there, whoops. Okay, so there. I think that's enough changes for now. And so it's pretty easy to modify the graphics in a game like this, which uses sprites that are particularly all saved in one file like this. So then now let's take a look at this menu and see what menu items we want to use that will help us save this file now. So I'm going to press J to cycle through this menu again. And oh, right there it says Shift S to save. So I'm going to press Shift S. And there, so now it's saved the game. Oh, I have to press any key to continue. And now if I cycle through again, I'll press J, and now it says symbol shift and space will exit the sprite editor. And there's no symbol shift on my external keyboard that I have connected to my Speccy Next computer. So in this case, I need to press on my keyboard, I need to press Control spacebar, which I'll do now. And there it brings me back out. So here you can see we have a bit of a problem. This sprite file has been renamed. It's now called Ranble, and then it has that squiggly thing, which I presume is a tilde, and it says Ranble tilde 1.spr. And we need to rename that back to its original file name, which was Ranble 7gfx.spr. So I'm going to press R here to rename it, and I'll use my cursor keys to go back and my delete key to get rid of that. And I'll rename it back to Ranble 7gfx.spr, and I'll press enter. And there it's back, named its original file name down here. And it's also added this file here, ranble1.pal, which I'm not sure what that is actually. I think that stands for palette, but I'm not sure what the palette file actually does. But we don't need to worry about that, I don't think. So let's see what our game looks like with the modified sprites and modified code. So we'll just go up here to our modified game, which is ranblemod.bas, and press enter and load it up. And we can see already on the title screen here, there are some updated graphics. The fuel pod here has the pink highlights on the side, and we got some extra shading on this building here. So let's go ahead and run the game now. I'll press J for joystick. And now you can see the terrain on the bottom has some more highlights to it, and our fuel bar up here has the extra highlights that we added as well. And now you can see our bullet is more visible also with the yellow outline around it. And the explosions should be a bit more random now. They're not quite so uniform and symmetrical as they were before. And oops, need some fuel. Missed. So let's check out our bombs now. So they certainly look different. And maybe not everything looks perfect, and maybe not everything is better, but it's certainly fun making some modifications to an existing game in preparation to making our own game. And there is our completed modified game with modified code and graphics. And there we go. We were able to make the graphics a little bit different and a little more interesting, I think. And that was pretty easy. All we had to do was open up the .spr file, which is the sprite file for the graphics, and it made it easier for us in this case because all the sprites for this game were contained in one single file. So we had everything there right in front of us, easy to edit, easy to see, and easy to test out. So it's pretty, I think, interesting and fun to modify an existing game as kind of a starting point to build ourselves up to the point where we're able to make actually our own complete game. And if you find it interesting to modify other people's games to start off with, then this is, I think, a good example and a good exercise of how we can do that to move at least maybe a couple steps further along on our journey of learning to develop our own games. So again, thanks for watching. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos, and I'm enjoying making them. And I know it's going kind of slowly because we take things one step at a time. We don't want to miss anything. And I'm not going in any particular order, obviously. But hopefully if you find these enjoyable, then you can keep watching and join me along on this journey, and we'll see how far we can get. So thanks again for watching, and if anyone would like to support me by becoming a Patreon subscriber, feel free to head over to patreon.com/spriteworks. Otherwise, feel free to just hang around here and check out the free content on this YouTube channel, because there's going to be a lot more to come, and it's going to be interesting.